Dear friends, welcome to our channel. We are very pleased to share with you different stories about love and betrayal from around the world. So let's begin our story journey today. Our company is downsizing. Today is your last day, unless you're willing to stay on as a janitor. Harlan Blair looked up, staring at the cold eyes of his wife. Astrid Blair, the new CEO of Radiance International Hotel Group, momentarily unable to believe his ears. "Don't bother going home either," Astrid said with contempt, waving dismissively. "Your things are already packed and left at the door." Astrid's sister Vivian sat nearby, giggling as if this was the funniest joke she'd ever heard. How fitting. From chief corporate culture advisor to janitor, what an inspiring career transition story. Harlan took a deep breath, looking around the luxurious office where he had participated in countless important decisions. 15 years, he had served at Radiance International Hotel Group for a full 15 years, growing from an ordinary trainer to senior training director of human resources and chief corporate culture advisor. He was 46 years old, with irreplaceable prestige and influence throughout the company, while his wife, Astrid, age 38, had only succeeded her father as the group's new CEO 3 months ago. "Just because I have reservations about your wolf culture?" Harlan asked, struggling to maintain composure while looking into his wife's eyes. Astrid snorted. "Your family culture is outdated, Harlan. Sentimentalism will only keep the company stagnant. I need people who can keep up with my pace, not obstacles that constantly question me." Vivian added with malicious glee. "Simply put, you're in the way. Do you know how many people still consider you a spiritual leader?" This makes it very difficult for Astrid to implement her new policies. Harlan finally understood that this was not just the end of his career, but also the end of their 7-year marriage. He smiled slightly and responded, "Thanks for this wonderful offer." Then he stood up, without saying another word, turned and left the office, leaving Astrid and Vivian exchanging smug glances. In the hallway, Harlan ran into marketing director Garrett, an old friend who had worked with him for many years. "I just heard," Garrett said quietly, his eyes filled with anger. "Astrid really did this?" Harlan nodded. "It seems my family culture and her wolf culture are truly incompatible." Garrett looked around, making sure no one was watching them. "There's something else you might not know." His voice grew lower. "Astrid and that new operations vice president, Thaddeus, they've been involved for at least 2 months." A pain shot through Harlan's chest, but his expression remained serene. "Thaddeus, the first one she promoted after taking office?" Garrett nodded. "That's him. 35 years old, ambitious, dubbed the Silicon Valley Hunter. Astrid chose him because he was an executive at a tech giant, specializing in aggressive expansion. They often stay late in the office, and—" Garrett hesitated for a moment. "Last Friday, I saw them enter the same room at a hotel on the outskirts of town." Harlan clenched his fists, knuckles white from pressure, but his voice remained steady. "I understand." "Thank you, Garrett. What are you going to do?" Garrett asked worriedly. Harlan took a deep breath. "I need some time to think." Leaving the building, Harlan indeed saw a cardboard box containing his personal items, placed right next to the security office. 15 years of career, packaged just like that into a cardboard box. He picked up the box, nodded to the security guard, and walked out of the building he had once regarded as his second home. He didn't go home. That large house in the wealthy district, which he now realized was no longer his home. He drove to an inconspicuous hotel downtown, got a room, placed the box on the bed, then sat by the window, looking at the bustling city, deep in thought. Astrid's betrayal was like a heavy blow, shattering his last illusions about their marriage. 7 years ago, when they met at an industry conference, he was attracted to this young and talented woman, and she also showed deep interest in his talent and personal charm. The first few years of marriage were fulfilling. They supported each other in their careers and grew together in life. But as Astrid rose through the ranks in her father's company, her personality began to change subtly. At first, it was just small things, like questioning employee benefit plans or scoffing at Harlan's concern for employee emotional well-being. Over time, these differences grew larger, especially after she became the company's chief operating officer. 3 months ago, when Astrid's father announced his retirement and the board needed to choose a new CEO from several candidates, Harlan, trusting in his wife's abilities and valuing their marriage, supported her nomination to the board, even though their relationship had already begun to cool. How ironic, Harlan said bitterly to himself. I helped her reach the pinnacle of power, and she immediately kicked me aside. Even more ironic was that Astrid and Thaddeus's betrayal probably began even before she took office as CEO. Thaddeus, known in Silicon Valley as an aggressive reformer, was the first vice president Astrid promoted after becoming CEO. In various meetings, he strongly supported Astrid's aggressive reform plans, relentlessly attacking old-era sentimentalism, directly pointing at the corporate culture Harlan had built over years. Anger burned in Harlan's heart, but was quickly replaced by cold clarity. He took out his phone and found a name in his contacts that he hadn't used in a long time: Preston Clare. Preston was the human resources vice president of Stellar Hotel Group, Radiance's main competitor in the national market. Over the years, Preston had tried multiple times to poach Harlan, but was always politely refused due to Harlan's loyalty to Radiance. Hello, Preston. It's me, Harlan, he said calmly. I think it's time to accept your proposal. But I have a better idea. After hanging up, Harlan began contacting Radiance's key employees whom he trusted one by one. First Garrett, then Finance Director Sybil, Technical Director Callum, and a dozen managers and key personnel from various departments. These people were talent that Harlan had personally cultivated or brought in over the years, and were also skeptical of Astrid's wolf culture. I won't force anyone to make a decision, Harlan expressed over the phone, but I'd like to ask you to consider a new opportunity. 3 days later, in a meeting room at the hotel where Harlan was staying, more than 20 key employees of Radiance Group gathered. They were all elites in their respective fields, with knowledge of the company's core technologies, customer resources, and operational experience. First, thank you all for taking the risk to come, Harlan began calmly. I know this is a difficult decision for each of you. Not so difficult, Garrett interrupted. Since Astrid took over, the company's atmosphere has become suffocating. Last week, she canceled all departmental training budgets, calling them irrelevant soft costs. Sybil nodded in agreement. She also ordered the finance department to reassess the salary structure of all long-term employees, clearly looking for excuses to lay off higher-paid veteran staff. Callum smiled bitterly. The tech department has it worse. Thaddeus directly intervened, demanding we abandon our stable development path for explosive growth visible in the short term, regardless of the impact on system stability. Harlan listened to these familiar voices describing the changes since his departure, with mixed feelings of pain and determination. Astrid's new policies were exactly as he had predicted, short-sighted and destructive, focusing only on short-term performance while ignoring long-term development and team cohesion. Stellar Hotel Group has offered me an important position, Harlan continued, as their corporate culture strategy officer. Preston promises that if you choose to join, they will offer more favorable conditions than Radiance and guarantee respect for our professional autonomy. The meeting room fell into a brief silence until Sybil spoke. From what I know, next Thursday there's an important meeting valued at $500 million. The Thompson Group wants to collaborate with Radiance on a new luxury resort project. Astrid has pinned all her hopes on this project to prove the success of her new policies. Harlan nodded. That information is valuable. Thank you, Sybil. Garrett reflected. If we collectively resign before that, Astrid will be in an unprecedented vulnerable position. But wouldn't that be too cruel? Harlan completed, with a sharp look in his eyes. More cruel than humiliating your own husband in front of subordinates while having an affair with another subordinate? The room fell silent again, each person weighing their personal career against team loyalty. I'll follow you. Callum was the first to speak up, not just because of what Astrid has done, but because I believe in your values and leadership style, Harlan. Others also nodded, showing their support. By the end of the meeting, everyone agreed to a plan. They would maintain silence, continue working until next Thursday's important meeting, and then. Thursday morning, Astrid stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window of her luxurious office, overlooking the city panorama. Today was the most important day of her career. The Thompson Group collaboration would bring $500 million in revenue to Radiance and expand its influence nationwide. This would be the ultimate proof of her leadership ability and the best response to those questioning her aggressive reforms. More importantly, it would prove to the board that her decision to get rid of Harlan, that stumbling block, was correct. Since Harlan left, she felt an unprecedented freedom, no longer needing to deal with lengthy discussions about employee satisfaction and corporate culture. With Thaddeus's support, she could implement her wolf culture without inhibitions. On her desk lay a fresh report. Last quarter's company revenue increased by 12%, while costs decreased by 15%. These figures would be the highlight of today's meeting, proving to the Thompson Group that Radiance, under her leadership, was heading toward a more efficient and competitive future. Vivian walked into the office, excited. Everything is ready. Breakfast is set up in the conference room, and Mr. Thompson and his team are already downstairs. Astrid nodded with satisfaction. And Thaddeus? Already waiting for you in the conference room. Vivian winked mischievously. He looks especially handsome today. Astrid didn't respond to her sister's teasing. Since Harlan left, her relationship with Thaddeus had become more open, although not officially acknowledged. It was an open secret among the executives. Thaddeus was young, ambitious, with a desire for power identical to hers. He understood how to win quickly in the business world, not like Harlan, who was obsessed with those soft values. Vivian, as Astrid's elder sister, supported this relationship. She herself was appointed administrative vice president after Astrid took office, and though mediocre in ability, was more than happy to help Astrid clear out the old forces and gain power and benefits in the process. Since that loser left, the company can finally operate normally, Vivian said, not hiding her contempt for Harlan. He always used that family culture to tie the company's hands. Astrid adjusted her expensive suit. Let's go. Don't keep the guests waiting too long. In the conference room, the Thompson Group's CEO Donovan Thompson and his team were already seated. But to Astrid's surprise, she saw another familiar face. Preston Clare, Stellar Hotel's Human Resources Vice President. Mr. Clare, didn't expect to see you here, Astrid said, struggling to maintain her smile, while internally alarm bells were ringing. Preston stood up smiling. Mr. Thompson thought that given the project's scale and complexity, inviting us at Stellar as a potential third partner might bring more synergies. Donovan nodded in confirmation. Yes, we believe that multi-party collaboration might produce better results. Just as Astrid was about to respond, the conference room doors opened again and a familiar figure walked in. Harlan. Astrid was thunderstruck, frozen in place. And what shocked her even more was that Harlan and Preston clearly knew each other and had a close relationship. Preston warmly patted Harlan's shoulder, introducing him to Donovan. This is Harlan, our new corporate culture strategy officer at Stellar and core advisor for this project. Astrid felt dizzy. After being humiliated and fired by her, Harlan had immediately joined a competing company and was even involved in this project. This couldn't be coincidence. More disturbing was that Harlan wore a serene smile on his face, just like that day in her office. But now, behind that smile clearly lurked something she couldn't decipher. Good morning, everyone, Harlan said politely. Before we begin our discussion, I'd like to introduce a few colleagues. He walked to the conference room door and gently pushed it open. Astrid's heart skipped a beat. Outside stood Garrett, Sybil, Callum, and over a dozen key employees of Radiance Group, each holding a document. What are these? Astrid asked with a trembling voice. Garrett stepped forward. These are our resignation letters, Astrid. They include all core members from the marketing, finance, tech, operations, and customer relations departments. Starting today, we will follow Harlan and join Stellar Hotel Group. Astrid's face instantly turned pale. These 20-plus employees represented Radiance's most valuable human resource, handling every aspect of the company's operation, from customer relationships to core technology, from financial planning to market strategy. If they collectively resigned, the company would immediately be paralyzed. You can't do this, she almost screamed. This is a business conspiracy. It's a breach of contract. Sybil calmly responded. There are no clauses in our contracts restricting us from changing companies, and we've all fulfilled the appropriate notice period. Callum added. Furthermore, we all have detailed records of various policies Ms. Astrid implemented in these 3 months that violate labor laws and company traditions. If necessary, We can make them public to labor authorities and the media. Astrid turned to Thaddeus and Vivian, but both looked equally shocked and helpless. For 3 months, Astrid and Thaddeus had focused on implementing their aggressive reforms, dismissing those soft factors like employee satisfaction and team cohesion. And Vivian, despite being administrative vice president, had no real management experience or team loyalty. Preston stood up, his tone calm but firm. "Mr. Thompson, considering Radiance's current personnel turmoil, perhaps we should reassess our collaboration plan. At Stellar, we're honored to welcome these outstanding talents and have the capability to independently undertake this project." Donovan thought for a moment and nodded. Indeed, the project's stability and continuity are crucial. "Ms. Astrid, if I may, it appears your company is facing a serious management crisis. We may need to pause our discussions with Radiance until the situation clarifies." Astrid felt the world collapsing. The $500 million project, her key opportunity to prove herself, was slipping through her fingers. At the same time, the company's core backbone was collectively defecting, and daily operations would fall into chaos. When the board learned of all this, her CEO position would also be in jeopardy. "Why?" Astrid asked quietly, her eyes filled with anger and disbelief, looking at Harlan. "Just because I fired you? Because our marriage ended?" Harlan calmly responded, "No, Astrid. Because you betrayed your employees, betrayed the values we built together, and these people," he pointed to the group of employees at the door, "simply chose values they believe in and a leader who respects them. No one forced them to make this decision." Astrid glared at Harlan, but internally she was already beginning to crumble. She realized that she had mistakenly viewed Harlan as a representative of sentimentalism, underestimating his influence among employees and also underestimating his determination as a betrayed person. "This won't end like this," she said through gritted teeth. Harlan smiled slightly. "Of course not, Astrid. This is just the beginning. Divorce papers will arrive at your lawyers. Good luck." With that, he turned toward the conference table, leaving Astrid standing there, isolated and unsupported, facing the biggest crisis of her career. The news that Thompson Group signed a $500 million collaboration agreement with Stellar Hotel Group soon spread throughout the industry. Also spreading was the sensational event of more than 20 core employees of Radiance Group collectively jumping ship. Wall Street analysts described this as an unprecedented talent exodus, predicting that Radiance would face a serious operational crisis and market share decline. Indeed, disasters followed one after another. Due to the lack of core talent, several important Radiance projects stalled. Customer complaints surged dramatically, and several long-term major clients began seeking alternative partners. The company's stock price plummeted 40% in 1 week, evaporating over $1 billion in market value. The board of directors called an emergency meeting, severely questioning Astrid's leadership ability. "How do you explain all this?" Chairman Westfield, an old friend of Astrid's father and a key figure who supported her appointment, now coldly stared at her. "This is a premeditated sabotage action." Astrid tried to defend herself. With a touch of panic, Harlan used his influence among employees to incite them to collectively resign. "We can sue him, sue Stellar. This is business sabotage." "From what I understand," one director calmly said, "you fired Harlan first, and in a rather unprofessional manner. Employees voluntarily resigned to follow a leader they trust, which is completely legally sound." Westfield shook his head. "Astrid, I supported you to succeed your father because I believed you had the ability to continue the corporate spirit he built. But your actions since taking office have completely violated this. Cutting training budgets, laying off senior employees, forcibly implementing so-called wolf culture. All this has eroded the corporate culture and team cohesion the company has built over years. Not to mention your relationship with that Vice President Thaddeus," another elderly female director pointedly noted, "and the public humiliation of your own husband. These behaviors not only reflect issues in your personal morality, but have also severely damaged the company's image and employee trust." Astrid had no response. She had indeed underestimated Harlan's status in employees' hearts, and also underestimated the damage her aggressive reforms caused to the company. But what she hadn't expected was that the board seemed to be thoroughly familiar with her private life. Westfield finally announced. The board has unanimously decided to accept your resignation. We will immediately begin searching for a new CEO, hoping to recover some losses. When Astrid walked out of the boardroom, she found Vivian waiting outside, a terrified expression on her face. How was it? Vivian asked anxiously. It's over, Astrid said coldly. I've been dismissed. Vivian's face turned pale. What about me? My position? What do you think? Astrid retorted, with a trace of bitterness in her tone. You got into the company because of me, without any real ability or contribution. Do you think they'll keep you? Vivian began to sob. This isn't fair. This is all Harlan's fault. How could he do this to us? Astrid shook her head but didn't respond. Deep in her heart, she knew it wasn't Harlan's fault, but her own choices that led to all this. She chose to betray her marriage, sacrifice long-term development for short-term gain, and ignore the value and contributions of those who once supported her. That night, she returned alone to the large, empty house. Harlan's things had long been gone, leaving only some essentials. The house was silent, only her footsteps echoing in the spacious hall. She entered the master bedroom and saw that the wedding photo on the nightstand was gone. It was from their wedding in Hawaii 7 years ago, both of them standing on the beach, smiling radiantly. Back then, she wasn't yet blinded by power and ambition, and Harlan was someone who always supported and believed in her. Now, everything had changed. Her phone rang. It was Thaddeus calling. She hesitated for a moment, but answered. I was fired. Thaddeus's voice sounded frustrated and angry. The board said I lacked team leadership ability and long-term strategic vision. Astrid wasn't surprised. So was I. We need to do something, Thaddeus said anxiously. Maybe we could start a business together, or… Thaddeus, Astrid interrupted him, her tone icy. It's over. You and I have both lost the most important platform. Our reputation in the industry is ruined. No one will believe us, invest in us, or follow us. There was silence on the other end of the phone. Then Thaddeus's voice turned sharp. So you're just giving up? That's your attitude? No wonder your husband and employees all betrayed you. Astrid hung up the phone. Thaddeus's words were like a knife, but she knew the real betrayer had been herself. Harlan, the board unanimously approved your proposal. Entering the lobby of Stellar Hotel Group headquarters, Harlan heard Leona, the receptionist, excitedly call out. He smiled and nodded in acknowledgement. Thank you for the good news, Leona. It had been 2 years since that industry-shocking great talent migration. In these 2 years, the team led by Harlan had not only successfully completed the Thompson project, but also won several major collaborations, increasing Stellar's market share by nearly 30%. Stellar had leapt to become the largest high-end hotel group in the country, surpassing the former leader, Radiance. Today, the board approved Harlan's proposed talent development program, which would invest huge resources in employee training and career development, further cementing Stellar's people-centered corporate culture. This was an important step in Harlan's heart and the best validation of the values he had upheld for years. Entering the elevator, Harlan met Garrett and Sybil. Over 2 years, they had grown from core staff brought from Radiance to key executives at Stellar. Have you heard? Garrett smiled. Radiance changed CEOs again, the third one in 2 years. Sybil shook her head. Not surprising. The corporate culture and team trust that Astrid destroyed aren't easily repaired. Harlan simply nodded slightly, not saying much. Although 2 years had passed, Astrid's name still caused a small ripple in his heart. The memory of that marriage and betrayal was no longer vivid, but remained an indelible chapter in his life. Speaking of which, Garrett continued, there are rumors in the industry that Astrid is now a regional manager at a mid-sized hotel chain, with a salary only 1/10 of her previous one. Sybil added, Thaddeus is worse off. I hear he switched to real estate, starting from the bottom. No one wants to hire a workplace third party. Harlan showed little interest in this news. What's past is past. We focus on the present and future. The elevator reached their floor, and the three walked toward the conference room. Today was the quarterly strategy meeting, which the entire executive team would attend. In the conference room, Preston was already waiting. Over 2 years, he and Harlan had established a deep friendship and mutual trust. Preston respected Harlan's professional capability and leadership style, while Harlan thanked Preston for providing him and the team a platform to showcase their talents. Harlan, Preston stood up to shake hands. Congratulations on your talent program being approved. This will be an important milestone in Stellar's development history. Harlan responded with a smile. It's the result of the team's joint effort. More importantly, it shows the board truly understands the importance of talent to our industry. The meeting went smoothly, with each department reporting quarterly achievements and discussing development plans for the next phase. The rapport and understanding established over these 2 years made the team operate like a precision machine, with everyone knowing their role and responsibilities. After the meeting, Preston invited Harlan to lunch. They went to a high-end restaurant across from the building, and after ordering, Preston suddenly said, "Harlan, there's something I want to discuss with you." Harlan raised an eyebrow. "Sounds serious." Preston nodded. "Indeed, it's somewhat complex. The Thompson Group plans to develop a new luxury resort project in Mexico, and they hope to collaborate with us. But the other potential partner for this project is Radiance." Harlan put down his cutlery, his expression becoming hard to read. "Radiance?" "Yes," Preston confirmed. "Their new CEO, Nolan Davis, seems very eager to rebuild Radiance's reputation through this project. The Thompson Group's idea is a three-way collaboration, but I'm concerned that, given the history, this might be uncomfortable for you." Harlan thought for a moment, then steadily said, "Business is business, Preston. If this collaboration benefits Stellar, I won't let personal factors interfere with my judgment." Preston seemed relieved. "I knew you'd say that. However, there's one thing you should know." He paused. "Astrid has recently returned to Radiance as a special advisor, mainly responsible for this Mexico project." This news did surprise Harlan. Since that incident, Astrid had been at a low point in the hotel industry, and her return to Radiance was unexpected. "I understand," Harlan said calmly, "but my stance remains unchanged. If this project has strategic significance for Stellar, we should participate. Working with Astrid won't affect my professional judgment." Preston carefully observed Harlan's reaction. "Are you sure you can handle working with her on the same project?" Harlan smiled slightly. "Preston, to me, she's just another business partner. What's past is past." But as he said these words, Harlan knew they weren't entirely true. Astrid had once been the most important person in his life, and also the one who inflicted the deepest wound. Although he had rebuilt his life and career, that scar would always exist. The next day, Harlan received a formal meeting invitation sent by the Thompson Group. The three-party talks would be held next week at Thompson Group headquarters. Harlan called Garrett. "Garrett, I need you to prepare all materials for the Mexico project as detailed as possible. I want to see a complete report before Thursday." "Understood," Garrett responded. "I'm guessing you'll personally participate in this project?" "Yes," Harlan confirmed. "This project is important. I want to ensure we're fully prepared." Over the next few days, Harlan immersed himself completely in researching the Mexico project. It was a large-scale integrated resort project valued at over $700 million, including a hotel, conference center, entertainment facilities, and luxury residences. If successful, it would be an important milestone for Stellar in the international market. On Thursday, Garrett brought a detailed report, and Harlan and the core team spent the entire day discussing and analyzing it. "From a business perspective, this is an excellent opportunity," Sybil concluded. "But collaborating with Radiance definitely carries risks, considering their instability and turbulence in recent years." Callum added, "Also, we need to consider the team's feelings. After all, most of us left Radiance because of Astrid's management style." Harlan nodded. "These are reasonable concerns. But I want to emphasize one point. We didn't leave Radiance because of personal grudges, but because of differences in values. If this collaboration benefits Stellar, we should approach it with a professional attitude." By the end of the meeting, the team unanimously agreed to participate in the project, but would establish strict protection mechanisms in the cooperation terms to ensure Stellar's interests and autonomy. Monday morning, Harlan and Preston arrived together at Thompson Group headquarters. They were guided to a spacious conference room, where Radiance's representatives were already waiting. The moment Harlan entered the room, everyone turned toward him, including Astrid, who was standing by the window. After 2 years without seeing each other, she had indeed changed significantly. No longer that radiant, powerful CEO, but instead a professional woman who looked tired and nervous. She wore a simple but professional suit, with hair much shorter than Harlan remembered. Their gazes briefly met. Astrid nodded slightly in acknowledgement, a flash of complex emotion in her eyes. But Harlan quickly looked away, expressionless. "Welcome, Harlan, Preston, Donovan," the Thompson Group CEO greeted them warmly. "Thank you for participating in this project discussion. Let me introduce Radiance's representatives. New CEO Nolan Davis and Special Advisor Astrid Winters." Harlan noticed that Astrid no longer used their married surname, having reverted to her maiden name. It was a small detail, but for some reason caused him a slight twinge. "Pleasure to meet everyone." Harlan maintained a professional smile. "I believe that through collaboration, we can create a successful project." The meeting began, with each party presenting their proposals and strengths. Radiance's new CEO, Nolan, was clearly well prepared, his proposal professional and comprehensive. Astrid maintained a low profile throughout the meeting, speaking only when directly asked, but her answers displayed a deep understanding and professional knowledge of the project. During the midday break, Harlan approached the coffee machine and poured himself a cup. Astrid seemed to want to approach him, but hesitated a moment and finally chose the opposite end, away from him. Harlan tacitly approved, deliberately maintaining distance. The meeting continued in the afternoon, with parties discussing specific cooperation details and responsibility divisions. Harlan presented several key suggestions, winning Thompson Group's approval. Toward the end of the meeting, Donovan raised a crucial issue. "Considering the project's scale and complexity, we need to designate an overall coordinator. This person needs extensive experience, good communication skills, and the ability to balance the interests of all three parties." The room fell into a brief silence. Then Donovan continued. "Personally, I believe Harlan is the most suitable candidate. His reputation and leadership ability in the industry are undeniable." Harlan was surprised, but what surprised him more was that Nolan, Radiance's CEO, nodded in agreement. "I concur." Although Harlan now belongs to Stellar, his understanding of the industry and project type is unparalleled. All eyes turned to Astrid, awaiting her reaction. As one of Radiance's representatives, her opinion was important. Astrid nodded stiffly. From a professional perspective, Harlan is indeed the suitable candidate. Her voice revealed clear reluctance, but Harlan didn't care. He knew that for Astrid, this was humiliating. Having to acknowledge that the husband she once humiliated and fired had now become an indispensable industry leader. After the meeting, representatives from all three parties signed documents, officially launching the collaborative project. As Harlan prepared to leave, he noticed Astrid standing alone in the hallway, apparently waiting for something. He deliberately avoided her, heading to the elevator with Preston. "It seems Radiance really wants to regain their lost reputation," Preston commented, "even to the point of bringing Astrid back for this project." Harlan let out a dry laugh. "They need someone to take responsibility for the mistakes from 2 years ago. Who better than her?" Preston observed Harlan's expression. "You still hold resentment toward her." "Not resentment, Preston," Harlan shook his head. "It's caution. She betrayed me, both as a wife and as a colleague. Such a person doesn't deserve trust. I'll remain vigilant." Back at Stellar headquarters, Harlan immediately gathered the team and began drafting detailed plans for the Mexico project. As overall coordinator, he needed to balance the interests and opinions of all three parties, an arduous task, but thanks to his years of experience and excellent communication skills, he won everyone's respect. In the months that followed, the Mexico project progressed smoothly. Harlan traveled to Mexico several times to inspect the site and meet with local government and partners. Astrid also frequently participated in project meetings, but always maintained a professional distance, not attempting to establish personal communication with Harlan. One night, Harlan worked late at the Mexico project site. When he left the office, it was nearly midnight. Walking toward the parking lot, he heard hurried footsteps. "Harlan." He turned and saw Astrid approaching quickly. Her expression was urgent, even anxious. "What is it?" Harlan asked coldly. "I just received news," Astrid said breathlessly. "Radiance's board has doubts about this project. They might reassess their participation, even consider withdrawing." Harlan frowned. "Why? All terms are already established." It's several directors concerned about costs and return cycle, Astrid explained. They believe the risk is too high. This would be disastrous for Radiance, Harlan analyzed calmly. Withdrawing now would not only violate the contract, but further damage Radiance's reputation. You can't afford another reputation blow. Astrid bit her lip. I know, but they won't listen to me. She looked directly into Harlan's eyes. I need your help. If you could attend next week's board meeting, speak as the project's overall coordinator, they might reconsider. Harlan let out a dry laugh. You're asking me for help, Astrid? How ironic. A flash of shame crossed Astrid's face, but was quickly replaced by determination. This doesn't just affect Radiance, but the success of the project. If Radiance withdraws, the entire project could be delayed or restructured. That doesn't benefit Stellar either. Harlan knew she was right. The three-party cooperation framework was already established, and if Radiance suddenly withdrew, it would be a major blow to the project. All right, he finally agreed. I'll attend the board meeting, but solely for the project's benefit. Astrid sighed in relief. Thank you. Harlan turned to leave, but Astrid spoke again. Harlan, one more thing. He stopped, not looking back. I was wondering. Astrid's voice trembled slightly. Are you doing well now? Harlan turned, looking at her coldly. I've never been better, Astrid. Losing you is the best thing that happened to me in life. With that, he strode away, leaving Astrid standing in the dark parking lot. A week later, Harlan, dressed in a formal suit, entered the boardroom at Radiance headquarters. This was his first time back since that incident. Many memories surfaced. The countless nights he spent here, the projects he led, the talent he cultivated, and finally, Astrid's betrayal and humiliation. Board members were already seated, some familiar faces, some new. Astrid stood to one side, watching him nervously. We thank Mr. Harlan for taking the time to attend our meeting, Chairman Westfield said. Although there's a complex history between us, as the Mexico project's overall coordinator, your opinion is very important to us. Harlan smiled slightly. Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Westfield. I have only one purpose today, ensuring the smooth progress of the Mexico project. For the next 2 hours, Harlan detailed the project planning, expected returns, and risk control measures. His presentation was professional and comprehensive, earning the board's respect and trust. When Harlan finished, board members began discussing. Most were clearly convinced by his analysis, but some still expressed concerns. I understand this project's potential, an elderly director said. But Radiance is just recovering from a crisis. We need a more stable development strategy. Astrid stepped forward. Precisely because we're recovering from a crisis, we need more than ever a flagship project like this to rebuild our brand image. Harlan has explained in detail the risk control measures, and I believe this project will be a key step in Radiance's revitalization. Harlan coldly observed Astrid's performance. Her speech was confident and persuasive, but he knew it was just for self-preservation. If the project failed, her last chance at Radiance would also disappear. Finally, the board decided, 7 votes to 2, to continue participating in the Mexico project. After the meeting, Westfield personally thanked Harlan for his contribution. We owe you an apology, Harlan, the old man said sincerely. 2 years ago, we made a serious mistake letting Astrid treat you that way. The company paid a terrible price for it. Harlan nodded. That's business, Mr. Westfield. Every decision has its consequences. Leaving the conference room, Harlan headed straight for the elevator, ignoring Astrid who tried to approach him. He had completed his task. There was no need for any personal communication. In the months that followed, the Mexico project progressed smoothly. Harlan's leadership and coordination ability won praise from all parties, including Thompson Group and Radiance executives. Astrid maintained a low profile, focusing on her responsibilities, avoiding too much direct contact with Harlan. When the project entered its final phase, an important opening ceremony was held in Mexico. As a symbol of three-party cooperation, Harlan, Astrid, and the Thompson Group representative attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony together. At the celebration after the ceremony, Harlan became the center of attention. The team he led not only completed the project on time, but also innovatively solved multiple problems, reducing costs by 15% from projections while quality exceeded expectations. Astrid stood in a corner, watching Harlan surrounded by people. She had barely touched her champagne, her eyes full of complex emotions. Preston approached Harlan and said quietly, "Your ex-wife looks very uncomfortable." Harlan glanced briefly at Astrid. "That's not my problem." Preston shrugged. "Of course not. Just feels somewhat ironic. Once she stood at the pinnacle of power, and now." "That's the price of betrayal, Preston," Harlan said calmly. "Everyone pays for their choices. She chose short-sightedness and betrayal. Now she bears the consequences." Toward the end of the celebration, Harlan prepared to leave. On his way to the exit, he encountered Astrid. "Congratulations, Harlan," she forced a smile. "This project demonstrates your leadership ability." Harlan nodded courteously. "Thank you. The project's success is the result of joint efforts from all three parties." Astrid seemed to want to say more, but Harlan had already moved past her, heading to the exit. He had no interest in hearing anything from her, whether courtesies, apologies, or explanations. That relationship was over, that pain sealed away. Back in his hotel room, Harlan turned on the television, tuning to a business news channel. He saw a report. The Mexico project's success was being hailed as the new benchmark in the hotel industry, and he, Harlan Blair, was acclaimed as the most visionary industry leader. He turned off the TV, walked onto the balcony, and gazed at the Mexico City night view. 2 years ago, he stood at the low point of betrayal. Today, he stood at the pinnacle of his career. Life is indeed full of ironies. His phone rang, a message from Preston. "Morning flight back to New York tomorrow?" Harlan replied, "Yes, the project has been successfully completed. Time to go home." Home. This word stirred a small ripple in his heart. Since divorcing Astrid, he hadn't had a true home. He had a luxurious apartment, but it was more like a temporary shelter than a home. Perhaps it was time to start anew, he thought. Not just professionally, but in his personal life as well. He had proven his worth, proven Astrid's mistake, and also proven that betrayal always comes at a price. Now, he could truly look forward. The next morning, Harlan and Preston flew back to New York on a private jet. On the plane, Preston asked, "What are your plans now?" "The board is very satisfied with your performance. They've already hinted they might promote you to Group COO." Harlan smiled. "That would be a new challenge. I look forward to it." "And your personal life?" Preston tentatively asked. "I've noticed that Freya, the new marketing director, seems quite interested in you." Harlan smiled. "Perhaps. We'll see how things develop." The plane landed in New York, and Harlan descended the steps, breathing deeply the fresh air. The sun was shining, everything full of possibilities. 2 years ago, Astrid's betrayal made him feel the world was collapsing. But now, he understood it was just a turning point, an opportunity to reassess his life and values. Her betrayal, instead, had elevated him, helping him find the path and companions truly suitable for him. And Astrid, she was paying the price for her choices, losing the peak of her career, social status and respect, and more importantly, a genuine relationship and a loyal partner. That is the price of betrayal. Harlan walked toward the waiting vehicle, welcoming a new day, new challenges, a new life. The betrayal of the past had receded. The road ahead was just beginning. If this story resonated with you, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more exciting content. We look forward to seeing you in our next story.